Hey, what is going on, everybody? Boilon here, and in today's video, I want to talk all about the new Hela rework for the Undying twosome tag with Zombie Iron Man. I want to go a little bit further into this. I want to talk about the stat adjustments that Hela is getting for next patch and how that looks now. If you take the before and then you get the after, and her stats are looking pretty impressive. Now, as someone who has a Gear 15 Hela with almost maxed out on the T4s, I'm wondering if this is something that I'm actually going to want to engage in. Normally, I don't care that much about war characters, but since I'm like halfway there, since it's only 2 characters, I just want to see if there's anything, worth going towards. Basically, we'll talk about more about that. I also want to take a look at some of the characters that you might want to pair with them. I admit it's a little bit awkward because there's only 2 of them, which means that you either need another twosome or a threesome, depending on whether or not you want to include Loki in there as well as part of the Asgardians. Talk about that as well when we get to the roster section. So, without further ado, if you're ready to go, sometimes I forget. Let's boil this down. I'm so used to saying things a certain way that even still, occasionally I mess up. Anyways, so this is the blog post from Friday. And this is I'm not going to go over the entire kit again, but there's some things that really popped out at me when I read it the first time. And that is just, like, the fact that you have to kill Hela, otherwise, this is Zombie Iron Man, by the way, otherwise he keeps coming back. And so that's a pretty big thing. Also, his kit is really good, actually, all things considered. And as a villain character, he's, depending on his stats, of course, which should be high, being a new character, power creep, and all of that, the kit is actually pretty good. I like the fact that there is ability block for 2 turns. It's only 1 character, but I mean, if it was AoE, it would be a bit overpowered, I think. And Disrupt for 2 turns, and on a cooldown of 4. Ability block for 2 turns on a cooldown of 4 is pretty good, if you ask me. And then the speed bar mechanics and all that, and 500% extra focus. Now, because he's a zombie, I kind of expect him to be a little bit slow, so I don't, even though he's a brawler, he's a DPS character, I don't think that he's going to be super fast. Otherwise, we'll see, right? Like, maybe I'll be impressed. But the 500% extra focus for an ability block attack is really nice, and it cannot be blocked. So there's a good chance you're landing this. His ultimate is an AOE, but the clear all barrier part, like, that is pretty big. And I could see, I don't know, right? We'll see if Hela's a mystic character, so I don't know if this is Darkhold counter territory, but I would be definitely very curious about that. And of course, this was fixed from the blog post, so it is defense down for 2 turns to all enemies, and that's really nice. It's unfortunate this comes after the prolonging of the duration of the negative stats effects, but I guess that would be like 3 turns of defense down otherwise. And 1500% extra focus for this as well. So I really like that, you know. And then the clear all charge mechanic. Now this is a bit interesting. This is not going to counter Spider Weaver, because it's not unavoidable, so therefore it can still miss, and it won't clear the charges. At first glance, that, for me anyways, I was thinking Heroes for Hire, because you're clearing all charges from 2 characters, so I don't know. Maybe this is a way that you can counter Heroes for Hire, if you still need to or whatever, with some different characters, that's, so you don't have to use, I don't know, whatever your other characters are that you're using to beat Heroes for Hire. I don't know. That's my because they all have charges, so that was my initial thoughts there. And of course, this is going to really bump up the health for Hela, and we're going to talk about that when we get to Hela's stats, because that an additional 50% health to Hela on top of what she already gets, plus the rework stats, is quite impressive. I'm not going to lie. The numbers look pretty good. So I like the kit for Zombie Iron Man. Interestingly, she didn't really need much of a damage boost because she was already pretty powerful as it is, and she's just getting additional bleeds, which obviously synergizes with Zombie Iron Man. Zim. Can we call him Zim? I feel like when I say Zombie Iron Man, it takes a long time. Versus I'm going to say Zim. That's what people are calling him, I think. So you know, it's really nice, and I like that all that synergizes with. And then of course her ultimate gets 5,000% extra focus for spreading, and that's really nice as well. And she gets that 25%. This is not new, but she gains 25% damage. Unfortunately, this part is on ward defense, so that's a little bit unfortunate, I suppose. That's the old, sorry. The new, it's in war. So they separated that out. I forgot. I was looking at the wrong side. And so now it's not just war defense. It's in war in general. So she still gets that 25% damage now across the board. And that's really, really good. And you basically need to kill her, but it's going to be a lot more challenging because she's putting up taunts on the Gregs. Zombie Iron Man is obviously going to get in the way as well. And, you know, her stat rework makes it as such that it is going to be much more challenging to get her down. Which is why, before we get talking about who you're going to want to pair them up with, or possibly pair them up with, I want to talk about this. Now, I haven't done a stats spreadsheet in a while, and maybe you guys have recognized this. I've done this in the past when it comes to old reworks. I think the last one I did was for Hulk and She-Hulk, the before and after kind of look based on the numbers that we were given for the stat reworks. So this reflects stats in war. So this is going to include the 25% damage, which she does get in war for herself. And this is going to include the 50% health as well that comes from Zombie Iron Man. So I'm assuming that you're going to be using the two together, and I just wanted to point that out. So this does include those two things there. But you can kind of see how the stats change. These are the old stats, and I just want to kind of point out that this is based on level 85, 7 yellow, 5 red, blue ISO 2. I don't know, I haven't changed that to blue ISO 3 at this stage. Gear tier 15 and Stark Tech 25%. I'm not quite prepared to do an average of gear tier 16 because not everyone is taking all the characters up there. I think gear 15 is a pretty good standard. And we'll see that there was 80% health, 16% damage, 50% armor, 62% focus, and 39% resistance. And so basically the way that you calculate the base stat changes is what the base stats are at, like, without red stars, without ISOs, without abilities, all of that, which is why they're separated in the spreadsheet. So you have to kind of look at that, and then from there you add on the bonus stats. So if that makes sense, that's how I came up with these numbers. That's how you get these numbers, from the base stat changes. So it's 80% increase on the base stat health before all of the upgrades. So, or all of the, you know, red stars and stuff like that. And so adding that all on is a huge amount of health. She is just behind Dormammu, or sorry, she's just ahead of Dormammu, actually, I think, because I'm pretty sure the Hulkbuster is number 1. And that's why I have a rating of number 2 for health. It's pretty crazy. It's like slightly ahead of Dormammu, because I think now Dormammu will be number 3, at least unless some of the other patch characters are higher, but as of right now. And that's crazy. Her damage stat as well, including the 25% from war, puts her in the top 10, which is equivalent to Rogue, which is really, really good as well. Now, of course, this health stat is with Zombie Iron Man, but you're going to use the two together if you're using them at all. Her armor stat is actually pretty respectable as well for the type of character that she is. That puts her into rank 13, which is equivalent to Luke Cage. That's the closest on the armor stat there. Focus is number 16. Pretty similar to Madeline Pryor, which is pretty good because she needs focus to do her stuff, but she gets bonus focus anyways for a lot of her kit. And resistance-wise, she's ranked number 17, equivalent to Wong. So across the board, her stats are within the top 20, or in some cases, like the health, you know, some of the best in the game. And so this was a very, very respectable stat rework, and this makes me think, as someone who has her built up already, well, hey, maybe I need to actually start thinking about this because I'm already over halfway there. Now, if you're someone who hasn't built her at this stage already, I don't know. It really depends on, obviously, you know, how much you care about war. And normally, I would not suggest this for anyone. She could be a very good standalone villain character, though, or at least in a twosome with Zombie Iron Man. Some of you people might have heard me talk in the past how villains are a bit of a rarity, frankly, and for newer players, for villains campaigns or for even the Scourge events for villains, there's not a lot of good options. And so Hela and Zombie Iron Man might represent, you know, a good twosome to use in those situations. So that might be a reason to, you know, raise them up a little bit more. Even if you haven't already, or if they're still pretty low on the board for you for Hela, it might be worth raising now. Fortunately, she is Mystic, of course. There's a huge saturation of Mystic characters, but still, it might be something to keep an eye out on. So for the second half of the video, I want to talk about some characters that you might want to pair with Hela and Zombie Iron Man. Admittedly, a little bit difficult because there's really only 2 of them, so there's only a few good choices, really, if you're not wanting to break too many characters up. Okay, and so we're here in the roster section of the game, and there's a couple of caveats and a couple of things that I want to point out as far as the characters that I recommend with Hela and Zombie Iron Man. And they're characters that are probably going to be a 2 or threesome, and I don't like breaking up full teams. So there is one instance here, actually 2 instances, where this may be possible. I also don't want to talk about characters that are basically nobody cares about or nobody really bothers with these days. So I'm trying to keep it somewhat relevant to the newer characters and reworks that we've had as of late. I don't want to drag in characters that are like over a year and a half old at this stage. So I want to start off with, obviously, Loki. So there's going to be, you know, if you want to use him, he does give bonuses to Hela, including the extra focus that she gives, the 20%, and of course the speed bar for Mystic Controller. So this can be quite helpful as well. Not to mention she's another Asgardian, so she's going to give Hela additional hit points as part of her passive that Hela has, and I don't think this is going to create another Greg without being on war defense, but there still is some synergy here, and this could be quite helpful. You don't necessarily have to run him, of course, if you're using him elsewhere as part of the speed meta, but, you know, that is an option as well. So some of the other choices, though, standalone, I kind of want to talk about Taskmaster a little bit, and I guess you could, if you're not building Underworld, you could use Taskmaster and, I don't know, Kingpin maybe, something like that, or maybe even Mr. Negative if you're going to be using Loki as well, because I believe he's a Mystic Controller, so there might be some synergy there. I know that as of recording this, Mr. Negative isn't out yet, but down the line, if you wanted to do that. And the reason I'm considering a lot of these characters that do have bleed aspect in the game, and we know that Taskmaster hits really effing hard now with his Underworld rework. He also applies bleed for 2 turns to all enemies, and he goes pretty quickly, and he does all sorts of other stuff. Blind and heal block, lots of good status effects, and Taskmaster is a very solid standalone character even since the Underworld rework. There, you know, you don't want to ignore Taskmaster. He's very powerful. So with that synergy with the bleeds, because you need bleeds as part of Zombie Iron Man's kit, this could be really important to have alongside. So who knows? This might make an appearance. And then, of course, in no particular order, I want to talk about the new Warriors. And because there are 2 or 3 of them, depending on how many of them you want to use. So Deathpool and Cloak and Dagger. Now, if you're using Loki on the field, of course, you could drop Deathpool and use Cloak and Dagger. Cloak is a Mystic Controller, so that'll bump his speed bar up ahead of, well, I guess he goes anyways, but ahead of other characters maybe. If you're not using Loki, though, you could use Deathpool as well, and the 3 of them with Zombie Iron Man and Hela could be quite good as well. So this is just a thought because they're not a full team as such, and so you're not really breaking up too many people by doing so. Also, Deathpool spreads negative status effects, so that's pretty good. We know that Cloak and Dagger chuck out a significant amount of status effects. I don't believe that they do bleed, though. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't remember them doing any bleeds, but they do a ton of status effects anyways, and Hela would just spread all of that, including blinds and whatnot. So could be a really powerful set of characters there. The other ones, I don't recommend this necessarily. Some people may have them built up, and probably, again, I don't, not a good idea to break them up, I don't think, especially I won't, but Ghost Rider and Morbius, because they both have bleed effects, and Ghost Rider's pretty fast. Ghost Rider's special obviously does bleeds to primary and adjacent targets, and same with Ghost Rider's, Morbius's special. Does this, I don't remember, does this do that in more offense? Does he bleed? I don't think so. He does trauma stuff. I mean, you probably don't want to break up this team if you have them built up, because you're probably using them against Heroes for Hire or whatnot. But there's 3 bleeds to primary and secondary target on the special. So again, lots of bleeds to synergize with Zombie Iron Man. I think this is kind of a bit lower down on my list as far as the character usage goes, because I wouldn't recommend building Ghost Rider and Morbius specifically for this. If you haven't touched them already at this point, I probably would just leave them where they are. And so this is just maybe for people who, I don't know, want to try something a little bit different, I suppose. And the final set of characters that I'm thinking about, these ones are a little bit older as far as on the list goes. Symbiotes, but specifically the villain symbiotes, Scream, Venom, and Carnage. And the reason for this is all 3 of them they do bleed stuff. So Scream does a lot of bleeds on her basic, and she has some good debuffs. Anyways, Carnage does bleeds on his ultimate very early on, and then he also gets turn bar, of course, if people get into red health. So he might be able to keep this going for the rest of the symbiotes. The thing that you're missing by not having Symbiote Spider-Man on the team is you're not getting the health bar and some of the healing from him as well, although I believe that's raids in it actually, so it doesn't really matter. And then Anti-Venom, of course, gives the revives and some of the buffing. But you might not need this anyways with Hela and Zombie Iron Man. So this could be really interesting, to have these three combos. Of course, Venom also does ability block, and actually, you know what? If his health stays healthy, then he'll give defense up to the other three anyways. But yeah, there's more bleeds, of course, on the special, and then more spreading, at least on a war offense capacity, because then you can choose where to spread these effects. And again, between the spreading of Hela and the spreading of Venom, there could be crap tons of bleeds everywhere. So this could be interesting, but they are older on the list as far as characters go. If you haven't built them already, I probably wouldn't consider it. But if you do have them, if you're a veteran player and have them built up, this might be a new usage for symbiotes, because admittedly, I don't get a lot of use out of them in war right now. I kind of use them for Sinister Six or these very low-end meta teams that they could possibly beat, but these days I don't actually use symbiotes too much. So if I can get more value out of them by using them with Hela and Zombie Iron Man, that would be pretty awesome. But otherwise, let me know in the comments down below some other characters maybe I missed that you might think of using them with. I do want to consider characters with bleeds or debuffs or things like that that might go really well with Hela and Zombie Iron Man. So let me know in the comments down below, and also let me know if this is anything that you're thinking about at all, and especially now that you've seen the stat rework for Hela, that is pretty massive, so this might make people think about it in a different light than what they did originally when they saw it on the blog post. So that's the end of this video, and of course, until next time, stay safe and healthy. I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.